My name is Mabel Johnson, and I've seen 73 years of life. I've raised 2 boys on my own, buried my husband, and prayed through more storms than I can count. But nothing prepared me for the day I realized the sweetest voice in my home was hiding the darkest secret. When my son Calvin told me he was bringing home the woman he wanted to marry, I was overjoyed. I still remember that Sunday afternoon. Sunlight pouring through the kitchen window, the smell of cornbread in the oven, and my heart beating fast like I was the one going on a date. He said, "Mama, I found the one. You're gonna love her." And when I met her, I did. Her name was Danielle. She was young, polite, and beautiful in a soft, humble way. She called me Miss Mabel the first time we met, even though I told her, "Child, you can just call me Mama." She had this warm smile, the kind that made you feel seen, even if the whole world ignored you. When she reached for the bowl of potato salad at dinner and said, "Let me help serve, Miss Mabel," I thought to myself, this one right here, she's heaven sent. After Calvin and Danielle got married, I moved in with them. Not because I had to, but because Calvin insisted. He said, "Mama, you've been alone too long. This house got space. You deserve some peace." And honestly, for a while, it felt like peace. Danielle made tea for me every morning. She'd peek in my room with that sweet smile, asking, "You slept all right, Mama?" She'd bring me blankets when my knees hurt, cook on Sundays when Calvin was tired, and even sat with me to watch old church recordings. I used to brag about her at church. "My daughter-in-law is a blessing," I'd say, smiling like the Lord himself dropped her in my lap. But blessings sometimes come wrapped in strange paper. And some angels don't come from heaven. It started small. I'd noticed Danielle getting quiet when I walked into the room. The smile would fade, just a little. Or she'd lower her voice when she was on the phone. Sometimes she'd take her plate to the patio for dinner, saying she needed some air. I told myself not to worry. People change after marriage. Maybe she was tired. Maybe I was imagining it. Then one evening, Calvin came home late. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loose, and his eyes heavy. I asked, "Baby, you okay?" He said, "Yeah, Mama. Just work stress." But when he went upstairs, I heard muffled voices through the ceiling. Danielle's tone sharp, angry. I couldn't make out the words, but I could feel it. Something was breaking. Over the next few weeks, Danielle stopped bringing me tea. She stopped sitting beside me during church service online. And every time Calvin left for work, she'd rush to her phone like she was waiting for something or someone. Now, I don't like snooping. My mama raised me better. But the heart of a mother is restless when her child's happiness is in danger. So one night, I knocked on Danielle's door. She opened it halfway, phone still in her hand. "Yes, Mama," I said softly. "Everything all right between you and Calvin?" She smiled that same angelic smile. "Oh, of course, Mama. We're just adjusting. Marriage stuff, you know." I nodded. "All right, baby. Just making sure." But something in her eyes wasn't right. A few nights later, it happened. I couldn't sleep. My knees were aching, so I went downstairs for some tea. The clock said 2:47 a.m. The house was quiet, except for a faint glow in the living room. Danielle was sitting on the couch, in her robe, phone in her hand, whispering. At first, I thought maybe she was talking to her mother, but then I heard her giggle and say, "You know I can't talk long, he's upstairs." I froze behind the corner. My heart sank. She whispered again, softer this time, "Don't worry, baby. I miss you too." That's when my cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. Danielle jumped up, eyes wide, trying to hide her phone. "Mama, you scare me half to death." I'm sorry," I stuttered. "Didn't mean to." I couldn't sleep. She smiled nervously, brushing the glass off the floor. "It's okay. Go back to bed, Mama. I'll clean it up." But I saw her screen light up again. And before she turned it away, I caught a glimpse of a man's name. Marcus. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. Made breakfast, hummed the gospel tune, and asked if I wanted pancakes. But her eyes wouldn't meet mine. I prayed that morning longer than I had in years. "Lord, if I'm wrong, forgive me. But if I'm right, show me the truth." A week passed, and then another. Danielle got more distant. Calvin looked more tired. The laughter in the house faded like an old photograph. Then one afternoon, while Danielle was out shopping and Calvin was still at work, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Now, I know it's wrong to look through someone's phone, but the sound of that name, Marcus, still echoed in my head. The screen lit up again. A message preview. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. My hands trembled. My breath caught in my throat. I told myself, no, maybe it's just a friend. Maybe. But my heart already knew. And for the first time in my life, I felt something inside me break. Not from pain, but from disbelief. That girl who called me mama, who cooked for me, who prayed with me, who smiled so sweetly was lying to my son. I picked up the phone. The lock screen needed a code, but the Lord must have guided my hand, because the first code I tried was Calvin's birthday. It opened, and what I saw on that phone changed everything. The screen glowed in my trembling hands. I didn't want to see what came next, but it was too late to stop. There were pictures. Danielle smiling in a restaurant I'd never seen, holding a glass of wine across the table from a man who wasn't my son. Then there were the messages. Hundreds of them. I wish I could be with you every night. I can't stand living in that house anymore. I'm only staying because of what he promised his mama. That last one hit me like a knife. Because of what he promised his mama. I sat down at the kitchen table, the phone still open, my heart pounding like it wanted out of my chest. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. I whispered, Lord, give me strength, because I don't know what to do with what I just found. Just then, the front door opened. Danielle's voice called out, Mama, I got your favorite tea. Honey ginger. My throat went dry. I slid her phone back on the counter and stared at the wall. She walked in, smiling like the angel she pretended to be. You okay, Mama? You look tired. I forced a small smile. Just a little headache, baby. She nodded, unpacking groceries, humming like nothing in the world was wrong. I watched her for a long time and realized how well she'd played her part. All those sweet gestures, they weren't love. They were cover. For 3 days, I said nothing. I prayed. I cooked dinner. I watched TV beside her like I didn't know. But every time she laughed or touched my son's shoulder, I felt that lie like a stain on my soul. On the 4th night, I couldn't take it anymore. Calvin came home from work, tired as usual. Danielle greeted him with a kiss. Dinner on the table, candles lit. She was acting, and he looked so grateful, like she was the best thing that ever happened to him. I waited till after dinner. I told them both, sit down a minute. I need to talk. Danielle looked nervous. Calvin said, Everything all right, Mama? I took a deep breath. Baby, I love you more than anything. And you know I never wanted to meddle in your marriage. But I need you to listen and listen carefully. He frowned. What's wrong? I looked at Danielle. Her eyes darted toward the kitchen counter, where her phone used to be. She knew. I said quietly, I saw something I shouldn't have. On that phone. Danielle's hand shot up to her mouth. Calvin looked confused. What phone? I whispered, yours, Danielle. The silence that followed was heavier than any storm I'd ever felt. Calvin turned to her. What's she talking about? Danielle started shaking her head. It's not what you think. But Calvin stood up. What? Did you? Do. I reached out, my voice trembling. Calvin, baby, I didn't want to hurt you. But you deserve to know. She's been seeing another man. Danielle's tears came fast. No, it's not like that. He's just someone I met before. Before what? Calvin shouted. Before you married me? Or after? Her silence answered for her. I wanted to comfort my son, but he looked at me like the ground had disappeared under his feet. Mama, he whispered, how long? I don't know, baby, but long enough to know it wasn't an accident. Danielle reached for him, sobbing. Calvin, please. I was lonely. You're always working, always with your mother. And that's when she said something that broke me completely. She pointed at me and cried out, You care more about her than me. The words hung in the air like poison. I stood up slowly. You think this is about me, child? I loved you like my own daughter. You had everything here. Respect, love, a home. And you threw it away for a lie. She covered her face, crying harder. Calvin just stood there, silent, breathing hard. He finally said, "Danielle, I can't do this." She begged, "Please don't throw this away. I can fix it." But he just shook his head. "You already did." That night, Calvin packed a bag and went to stay with a friend. Danielle locked herself in their bedroom, crying till morning. I sat in the living room alone, praying, not for myself, but for both of them, for the broken hearts, for the trust that couldn't be unbroken. When I woke the next day, Danielle was gone. Her clothes, her things, everything. Just a note on the counter. "I'm sorry, Mama. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just didn't know how to be loved right." For weeks after that, the house was silent. Calvin came back, but the light in his eyes had dimmed. I cooked, cleaned, did my best to fill the quiet, but it wasn't the same. Months passed. One morning, as I was watering the plants, I saw a car stop by the curb. It was Danielle. She stepped out slowly, thinner, tired, holding an envelope in her hands. "Mama," she whispered. I didn't speak. I just waited. She came closer, tears in her eyes. "I wanted to tell you. I left Marcus. He wasn't who I thought he was. He just used me." I sighed. "Child, sometimes the devil wears a charming smile." She nodded. "I know. I lost everything. But I need to give you this." She handed me the envelope. Inside was a photo, her and Calvin on their wedding day, and a letter. She said softly, "You were right, Mama. You were the only one who ever treated me like family. I wish I'd known how to love you back." Then she turned, walked to her car, and drove away. I haven't seen her since. That night, I sat with that letter and cried for both of them. Because even though she did wrong, I still loved her. Love doesn't disappear. It just changes shape when hearts break. A week later, I gave the letter to Calvin. He read it in silence and said, "Mama, I don't hate her. I just wish things were different." I smiled sadly. That's what life is, baby, a whole lot of wish it was different. But God knows how to make pain into peace. He nodded and hugged me tight. Years have passed now. Calvin's healed. He remarried a kind woman who truly loves him, and me too. But sometimes, when I see the old photo on the mantle, I whisper a prayer for Danielle. Because not all angels fall from heaven. Some just lose their wings on the way. And I learned something I'll never forget. Sometimes the sweetest smiles hide the deepest wounds. And sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who never learned what love really means.